I'm Aaron. It's President's Day, and this is the Rad Report. So as promised, this channel is primarily initially about the renovation and appreciation of this 1984 Toyota van that I just got. Today we're going to check it out as it is, as received, as it came. But first, before we get out there, I thought I would tell you the story a little bit. So yeah, obviously the Rad Report's kind of all about Craigslist. But this is not a Craigslist story. It's a hashtag story. It's a Web 3.0 story. I was looking on Instagram at the hashtag Radwood, and I just happened to see this van posted to this guy, NorCal Car Culture, said he was selling it. And I looked at it and I was like, whoa, is that thing like as clean as it appears to be here? I sent him a message and he said, oh, it's not actually for sale yet. I have to smog it. And I said, okay, well, I think I want to buy it. And he said, okay, I think it'll be $4,000. And then the next week, he sent me a message and said, oh, sorry, bad news. It was parked out front. Somebody drove by. She offered us $5,500 for it. We took it. It sold. And I said, oh, man, well, if it falls through for some reason or something happens, let me know because I do want to buy it. He wrote me the next day and he said, actually, her credit card failed to run. She's not going to buy it. Do you still want it? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, I'll stick to the original offer of $4,000. And so it never actually went on Craigslist. So we drove up there and we picked it up. And it was just like uncanny, the condition. And I kind of asked him about it. And it turns out that it was owned by a 95-year-old man who was his neighbor. And he's kind of known as this car guy, but as he put it, he usually deals in real collector's cars, meaning, 58 Chevy, stuff like that, old muscle cars. He just really wanted to get rid of this. So it only has 113,000 miles on it. It hasn't been driven much, barely at all, in the last few years, but the old guy continued to keep registering it. And we'll go outside and we'll check it out. I was charmed by this car by its, its form and its shape, its size from the outside from the photos, but I'd never driven one. And driving this thing is just super, super fun. It's like you're kind of riding high. You have this like amazing perspective because there's no hood, so you feel like you're kind of riding the front of a train or something. And it like has a little bit of bumpiness. I don't think it's nearly as severe as people think a car where you're sitting on top of the axle would be. It handles nicely. It has nice steering weight, I think. The wheel can adjust to this really flat bus-like position, but it also can come forward to something that I think is a little more comfortable and familiar and car-like. I'm 6'3", and I fit in it nicely. It doesn't feel small in any way. I love the way this bulkhead, gives you this kind of big surface to put shit on. And I think that probably, maybe it needs a little foam bolster right there to rest your elbow on when you're shifting, but that's fine. Speaking of shifting, it shifts really nicely. It's a great direct feeling kind of transmission, and a nice amount of resistance. I think it kind of feels like an old Toyota truck would. So this thing is this pretty amazing piece of molded plastic that contains these multiple compartments, right? It has this kind of pocket, which is like clearly predicted the iPhone. It has this little slot, which I'm guessing is for coins. It has this pocket here. It is actually where the ice maker would go if you had the ice maker model. This piece of plastic needs to be replaced, and it looks like to me like I'm going to be able to probably save this insert. There's a little crack on it, but it'll probably be okay. But I'm sure there will be a many months long hunt to find this larger, rather ambitious piece of molded plastic. So that's my first concern. Second concern is the boot. My wife, Rachel, offered to make a new boot, and I think that we'll probably hunt down some cool, I'm thinking maroon patterned fabric, or wouldn't it be great to find like real maroon goat's leather or something for there? So we'll replace that. The dash is just kind of a miracle. It is dusty. As I said, I didn't clean this car before bringing it in, but it has no cracks on it. It is completely crack-free. And I think rather miraculously the clock works. And it was set to the right time when I got the car. The other thing that's sort of surprisingly not cracked is the housing for the steering column. All these switches work. The mirror adjustment switch works, the defroster works. I think kind of miraculously, or maybe I'm just have a false sense of what breaks because of my 928, but the cruise control works, the AC works, and the AC rear button works. All these work. Well, I think a lot of times on these old cars, you can get these situations where it appears to be okay, but then like the knob will break off in your hand the first time you try to use it, and you think, how did this car make it 30 plus years and now I'm the one to break it? So far, so good. This all seems to be working as it should. It has the OEM stereo. It does not work at all. Hoping that it's a fuse or something. I noticed that there was another version that actually has a equalizer right there, so we might have to try to find that one day. Came with some fuses, not much else. The door panels are in good shape. They have these little stains on them, but those will just be handled with some shampooing. Same with the rugs. The rugs are in good shape aside from some stains, and those will just be shampooed. No big deal. OEM floor mats, gotta love that. It has crank windows, but it has a door lock button right there. See that? Which works, and that's pretty cool. It has this, which my CRX had too, which is this fresh air switch. So I guess the idea is that if you're driving and you start falling asleep, you just flip that sucker and have air blow into your face. It works. I've used it as such. All the lights work. Inside, these things, one of the common problems you get with old cars is like these things don't stay up anymore. The hinges have failed and the friction isn't holding them up, but these do what they're supposed to do. It does not have a sunroof. It's got this switch for controlling the amount of coolth that's sent back to the passengers. One thing about these vans, which I kind of love, is that the seats don't sit on the ground. They sit on this kind of deformed plinth because the engine is under here, right? And so that means that unlike a lot of vans, which, this is kind of a bummer because it's a cool thing, but like in a Vanwagon or a Eurovan, often the seats will rotate back so that you can have your kind of like party scenario. That is impossible because of the sort of shape of this bulkhead. You can see kind of where the handles were grabbed and there's like little marks and stuff, but none of it is very significant and all of it will be shampooed off, and we'll cover how to do that. There's a couple spots where the vinyl is peeling back from the door, but again, I think we could just glue that back up there. That wouldn't be an issue. The other thing is this car is a little bit loud at speed, so it might make sense to actually insulate the door panels with some kind of mixture of the like Dynamat-like stuff and some closed cell foam. So all that's up for consideration, but I think up here in terms of the major cosmetic item that I'll be hunting for, again, is that center console. That's kind of the thing. Now let me move to the back. So this is a 3-row vehicle, but I think it's about as small as one could be for it. I haven't really done the dimensions yet, but perhaps that will appear on your screen now. I think it's about the same size as a Vanwagon, I would guess, and maybe a Eurovan's a little bit longer. The thing that I learned when I bought this was that the previous owner had actually had the seats fully covered in classic old guy style with t-shirts. So the upholstery is literally like new back here. It's as though it's never really been sat in. Fortunately, I'm a huge fan of maroon, so. Let's talk about the kind of material qualities and how this thing is doing in terms of wear and tear. I mean, one of the weirdest things about this is that this giant bulkhead that separates the front seat from the back seat functions as this footrest, which I think is pretty cool and pretty comfortable. It also adds a lot of structural rigidity to the car, so it makes the car much safer. It's also where the engine is, so eventually we'll pull that up and peek in there, but this video is just about the more superficial qualities of this car. As you can see, there's like a little bit of wear and dirt around the vents and things like that. On the door, there's just no rips. It's just like a little bit dirty, and I think all of that's going to come off. This is sort of an odd material. It feels sort of like a short velour, but it should shampoo. The condition of the ceiling on this car is just like completely clean, and it doesn't have any skylights, but I don't know that you really need them. OEM rugs here, and they are just a little bit stained, but underneath it's like very clean. So I'll just go through and I'll vacuum this car. I'll document all of that, the process. This is just an introduction. The car has independent controls for the climate. So in the back seat, you know, if the driver gives you the luxury of coolth, you have the capacity to control it. Of course, you also have your ashtray. And then this is like the battery compartment down here, which is pretty amazing. And speaking of ashtrays, on the driver's side, you have the kind of booklet magazine rack. On the passenger side, you have another ashtray. So really, you can just smoke all over this car as needed. I love these. I love the kind of municipal vibes of a sliding window. It just really reminds me of taking the bus in a good way. There's a little bit of folding that's happening with the vinyl right there, but I should be able to push that back in and glue it down. So there's very little kind of plastic housing for componentry. So you get something like this, but you can see, you can see the joint. You can see the way the lever works. The seat belts and seatbelt receptacles clip into these welded loops that are attached to the frame of the car, which is, just right there. And what that means is that when you sort of dismantle the car to turn it into a cargo van, or if, it's going to be turned into a sleeper, it's really easy to find and do everything. And I think that this decision to sort of make accessibility and mechanical directness of the priority instead of a kind of smooth, uninterrupted fascia is like an awesome choice, and something that is one of the many reasons I love this era of vehicle. And I think it's important to say is one of the many reasons that I don't think of the Rad Report or this enthusiasm as being about nostalgia or a kind of retrograde appreciation. It's about, a more direct understanding between aesthetic and function that these cars represent, that any car of any era could represent, But this just happens to be this perfect blending between the manufacturing processes around things like molding plastic, meeting up with the kind of, I don't know, dominant theories about adjustability. And so you get this cool blend of like really manual analog adjustment and some sort of lovely shapes wrapped around them. So again, it's, for me, these cars aren't a nostalgia play. They're just about a kind of beautiful moment in design. These seats actually, if you didn't want to turn it into a full-on camper, you can still sleep in it because the seats, these unlock and the seats completely flip down. And so you can actually have a kind of flat bed space in here, which is really cool. And then coming into the back, you can see, you know, it was used. There's stains and stuff, but it should be all pretty easy to get out. I think that I will likely, once I get the stereo working, replace the speakers. Hopefully I can get it working. And then there's another part that I'll be hunting for. That bezel is broken. Let's go through it and talk about what we see when we look at this thing. One thing is, I mean, just generally, obviously, from like 10 feet away, it looks nearly immaculate, sort of like you can't believe the kind of condition it's in. But as you approach, as is so often the case, you discover the issues. And there aren't that many of them. And I think the primary takeaway is that the paint is in really good shape. This thing was, without question, garaged, like the whole time. And so that means that any kind of damage it has is damage that's kind of localized damage from driving it and encountering, you know, maybe parking meters or other drivers. But it's not like an overall degradation of the finish. So those local things are way easier to deal with than trying to, you know, fix an entire paint job that's kind of coming apart. So let's go. Let's like go step by step and talk about what we see. First thing, this is bent. I don't know what exactly is supposed to happen there. Maybe that's by design. It kind of makes it look fast. I'm not sure. The trim, the paint on the chrome trim has basically failed all the way around this window. It seems like there's two directions you could go with it. You could either take off all the paint and just go with a kind of metal finish, or you could sand it and repaint it. I think I'll probably try to sand it and repaint it. This bezel below, which I gotta say is such a weird design choice, is fine. And the corner seals are fine, so that's good. The headlights are like shockingly bright on this car and look really nice. I often go through and replace headlights with, no, I'm not going to say LED, are you kidding me? I replace them with brighter halogen lights, but these are just fine and look good. The plastic bumper on the front is like really straight. This thing is just really nice, and I'll leave it just like that. I will be taking off that license plate because I do love the sunset license plate, but I love not having a front license plate more than that, and it seems like nobody seems to give a shit about that anymore. I hear that they used to give tickets for it. I've never even gotten a warning or pulled over, had it mentioned. I drove through some bushes, kind of scratches along the side of it, and I will attempt to deal with those. They're very superficial, and I'm basically positive that I can polish those out and look forward to doing so. There's some trim that's kind of falling off on both sides, this piece of trim. I mean, one thought is to actually remove that trim entirely I think the car would look better without it. So what I might do is actually take the one that's falling off and see if I can get rid of that adhesive foam underneath and just have it be the two-tone paint. The wheels, the tires definitely are new, or very close to new, which is pretty awesome. And then the wheels, people call them baby Supra wheels. I think they're from a first-gen Supra. And I think you can still get the cap somewhere, so I'm going to be on the lookout for those. They were kind of terribly repainted, like not sanded, just sort of spray painted on top of. So I think if I keep them, I'll probably actually try to sandblast them and start over with the paint. And if I did that, I would probably try to color match the paint to the lighter tone or the darker tone. I don't know, but I think I'd probably color match it to the gold. Or maybe the white. Maybe that would be the move. Match that so that you have this color picked up across the car. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling that. I think that's what I'd probably do. The roof, so dirty, has no signs of wear, no sun damage, no clear coat peeling, none of that, which is, again, a miracle. The rubber is in good shape and it's still soft, like it's still soft under the touch, which is a really good sign. There's a little dent here, which I think a dent doctor could take care of. There's waviness across this rear bumper, and I have no idea. Oh boy, even pushing it just made that whole thing just cracked under my finger. I think that probably I have to just kind of leave it be. Yeah, the clear coat's failing on it. Or I could try to get really, really lucky and find a new rear bumper, but it seems a little bit unlikely. Maybe there's a possibility that I could re-clear coat it. I don't know. There's a little tiny dent right there. This side has the major damage, so I mean, relative to the vehicle. There's a good sized dent right here and right here, which I am not sure, honestly, if the dent doctor could take care of those. Maybe this one, but maybe not that one because it's so close to the edge. We'll see. I'll call him up, see what he says. There's some kind of weird mark here, but it's actually not dented. I'll just be able to polish that off. Again, you can see the trim completely fell off this side and there's just this foam underneath, so it does seem to make a good argument for just being removed. Over here too. Yeah, there's some sort of incident on the side of this car. Someone decided to duct tape that one on, which is really weird. Otherwise, yeah, some light scratches. I mean, I think basically if the paint just gets kind of a good polish, almost all of that will be gone. There's a tiny, tiny bit of rust showing through where the paint was scraped away, so I'll probably go through here and just get rid of the rust and then do a little bit of, even if it's not the color match, just a little bit of primer to keep it from rusting. And that's it, I think. That's the car.